I mentioned that there are gender differences in personality. And, that's a very controversial claim, weirdly enough. It's something that's always rather shocked me that it is controversial. This is from the Gender Equity Resource Center at Berkeley. Gender is a socially constructed system of classification that ascribes qualities of masculinity and femininity to people. Gender characteristics can change over time and are different between cultures. Well, the number of things that are wrong with those two sentences is it would take about 3 hours to actually point them out. I mean, first of all, the fact that gender characteristics can change over time and are different between cultures in no way implies that those things are socially constructed. It implies they are partly socially constructed, at best, but it also indicates that some of the reasons that things might change over time and are different between cultures could be biological. Like there's no a priori demonstration that that's impossible, and it's not impossible. And gender is a socially constructed system of classification. Well, actually, no, that isn't what the data seem to indicate. And so the best data that I know on that are the Scandinavian studies on personality. And we'll take a look at them. Oh, this is a good one. So this is interactions with rhesus monkeys and toys. We compared the interactions of 34 rhesus monkeys living within a 135 monkey troop with human wheeled toys and plush toys. Male monkeys, like boys, showed consistent and strong preferences for wheeled toys, while female monkeys, like girls, showed greater variability in preferences. Thus, the magnitude of preference for wheeled over plush toys differed significantly between males and females. The similarities to human findings demonstrate that such preferences can develop without explicit gendered socialization. So, exposure to prenatal life events stress is associated with masculinized play behavior in girls. So, and that was an analysis of in utero exposure to hormones, because one thing that seems to happen, this is one of the many things that contribute to the differences between males and females, is that the basic human body phenotype is feminine. So if you have XY chromosomes or XX chromosomes and you're not exposed to testosterone in utero, you'll come out with a female physiology. So what happens is that in utero, the male embryo is masculinized by testosterone. Now, there's also testosterone production for women, but there's more for the male babies. And there's some evidence that suggests that the more testosterone that a fetus is exposed to in utero, the more masculinized their cognitive styles and toy preferences and behaviors are. But it's also the case for females. Like, if the more they're exposed to testosterone in utero, the more that's also the case. And that's what this particular study showed. So this is Simon Baron-Cohen's work. He did the work with fetal development, and he showed that fetal testosterone is inversely correlated with social behaviors such as eye contact in infancy, peer relations in preschoolers, and mentalistic interpretations of animate motion. Male fetuses are exposed to higher levels of testosterone than are female fetuses. So his theory actually is that autism is the extreme end of masculinized cognitive development, because it's all thing-oriented, no people orientation at all. And then the opposite end of the distribution, he's associated with predisposition to psychosis, although I find that part of the theory weaker. But, it's who knows? It's certainly a possibility. So, yeah, and eye contact is one of the things that's really lacking in people who are autistic. And, you get an awful lot of social information from observing the face, and you have specialized circuits for pulling in emotional information from face observation. So yeah. UN indices of gender equality and economic development are associated with larger gender differences in agreeableness, but not in extroversion or neuroticism. So what's happened in the Scandinavian countries. So imagine that any given trait is a combination of environmental variables and genetic, biological variables. Okay, now, you tend to think of those things as isolated, but they're not. Weirdly enough, the relationship between biological determination and cultural determination is determined by the culture, which is a very strange thing. So what I mean by that is that if you were 2 years old and I threw you in a box and did nothing but beat you every day for 10 years, the probability that you would come out agreeable is very low. Right? So, and the point I'm making is that you can take an individual, and if you put them in a radical enough environment, you can pretty much shift them where you're going to shift them. Now, the harder you want to shift them, the more force it's going to take. So, you know, like if you took a really agreeable person, you'd have to be pretty malevolent to set up the circumstances that would really make them self-centered and predatory. But I suspect you could do it. So what happens in the Scandinavian countries is that there's been a lot of attempt to flatten out the contribution of society on gender differences. And so all that's happened is that the biological differences have been maximized. See, because what you're really looking for is contribution. And for society to have a contribution, there has to be different treatment for men and women, because otherwise society has no effect on the differences between men and women, obviously, and then there's nothing left but biological differences. Now, there could be no biological differences. You know, that's one possibility, and the strict social constructionists would predict that. In fact, they still teach that in universities all the time, and which I truly believe is appalling. I think the data is already in on that. And there are consequences of this too. So that still the differences between men and women, say with regards to agreeableness, still aren't that big, even in the Scandinavian countries, but they're a lot more consistent and larger there than they are in any other societies that have been studied. So that's pretty weird. And these are big samples. These are samples of tens of thousands of people. They're not trivial studies.